All right, let's talk Celtics here. But before we do that, we want to do it with you. It is Boston has entered the chat after all, so enter it with us. 617-790-0928. Leave us a voicemail. We play it here. You can also email us, thechat@nesson.com, and send us your tweets, which we'll get to later in the show. But go ahead, fire them up, and send them in. All right, so I saw this about the Celtics. It didn't surprise me. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. They are already favorites to repeat next season as champions. Not a shocker there, but they are heavy favorites, Adam. Heavily favorites. Celtics at 3-1. The next closest is the Nuggets at nearly 8-1. And then the list goes on and on. We know the usual suspects: Timberwolves, Mavericks at 9-1, Bucks at 10-1, Thunder right there at 10-1, 76ers 12-1, Knicks 16-1, and everyone else after that doesn't matter anyways. Your thoughts on that? I mean, I wasn't surprised to see them as the favorite. I think they should be, but that heavily favorite kind of surprised me a little bit.
It's pretty remarkable, right? Because I feel like most everybody picked the Mavericks to beat the Celtics in the NBA Finals. Then the Celtics end up winning the Finals in 5 games. Right. Now, all of a sudden, they're the runaway favorite to win the title next year, which is just kind of funny to see that, right? But in terms of what I saw anyway with the Celtics, and a lot of other people did too going into the NBA Finals, is that this team has 2 superstars that aren't going anywhere. They have an outstanding supporting cast that isn't going anywhere. I mean, this team, all the key pieces to this team, including Al Horford, who I think was probably the biggest question mark as to whether or not he was going to retire, is coming back into the fold. So you have that insurance that the Celtics cashed in when Kristaps Porzingis went down. Horford filled in nicely for him. Porzingis, obviously, his health is a question mark, so that will be something to watch moving forward going into next season. What this injury looks like, and then another injury that he suffered during the NBA Finals, if that requires any surgery. I haven't heard anything about that. I don't know if it does or not, but anyway, with Porzingis, health has always been the biggest question mark with him. So that'll be something to watch moving forward. And then also Derek White, if they're going to be able to figure out a contract extension with him as well. But you just inked Drew Holiday. Jaylen Brown's locked up. They're going to extend Jason Tatum again, and he's going to get over $300 million. Horford's coming back. And then, you sort of just fill the pieces in, around them, just to provide some depth. I mean, they're just in such a great spot. I can see why they're the favorites going into next year.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list now. I mean, even the teams I named, none of them out east really concern me, and I think the odds reflect that. Again, after the Celtics, you have the Nuggets, Timberwolves, and Mavericks before you see an Eastern Conference team. And even those odds are so long at the Bucks at 10-1, and I'm okay with that. I mean, Bucks 10-1, 76ers 12-1, Knicks 16-1. None of those teams really scare me. I mean, I guess in a sense, out of that cluster of teams, I would take the Bucks the most serious in that they have 2 bona fide superstars who just need to be healthy, and we have an interesting series, an interesting dichotomy between them and the Celtics. But they don't have the depth, the Bucks I'm talking about, they don't have the depth of the Celtics. And at this point, am I crazy here to trust Joe Mazzulla more than I do Doc Rivers? I'm just being honest, Adam. Like, they both have 1 ring. Doc, what have you done for me lately, right? Like, it ain't look good. And Joe Mazzulla feels like he's trending upwards. I have to think he's going to get better the more experience he gets. I would say the Celtics have the better coach as well.
Yeah, I'll always be grateful to Doc Rivers and what he did in Boston with Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and that cast of characters from back in the day, winning a title, getting to another NBA Finals, getting to a couple of conference finals as well. But at this point in their careers, I mean, Joe Mazzulla is clearly not just an up-and-coming coach, but now a championship head coach. I mean, this is I think the comparison's been made to Eric Spoelstra, right? Where Mazzulla and Spoelstra are kind of similar in the way they sort of came out of nowhere, a young coach. They got a great deal of talent to work with, and they were able to capitalize on that. And Spoelstra, we've seen what he's been able to do with some of these Miami Heat teams that aren't the most talented in the world, and he's able to get them to to conference finals and NBA finals even. So I think Mazzulla, if you're going to make that comparison, Spoelstra is an apt comparison. But, the other part of it too, Travis, is, how much confidence you have in Brad Stevens now as an executive and taking the torch. And look, I think Danny Ainge deserves a huge amount of credit for this championship as well. And we talked about it last time out, about the trade that he made with Brooklyn, the draft picks to get Tatum and Brown. Obviously, he drafted Marcus Smart, signed Al Horford. The Smart deal led to the trade with Kristaps Porzingis, and all of those things start to come together. Then Stevens comes in the mix. He makes the deal to get Drew Holiday and makes the Porzingis deal. And so, you look at all these sort of moves that were made, years ago, setting the stage for now. And, but in terms of moving forward, Brad Stevens, you have confidence in and if you want to go all the way to the top, how about ownership? Yeah. How about ownership willing to spend the money, opening up their wallets and committing and letting Brad Stevens do his thing, and then identifying Joe Mazzulla as a talent. So right now, the Celtics organization as a whole is in really good shape.
Yeah, even the way, going back to the drama, the way they handled Ime Udoka, at the time, I was frustrated as a media member because we just weren't getting the answers that all of us were seeking to put out into the ether of the story. But, even that, I thought they handled really well. They kind of, best they could, they kept it internal. And, they pivoted. They had a plan. I still remember the press conference was so awkward, but it was you got to give them credit for just hey, something happened. We moved off. We're moving on. Boom. We're on to Cincinnati. And I now in hindsight, I kind of respect the way they handled that even in adversity. You mentioned Kristaps Porzingis while you were talking there. And I just kind of thought, I wonder how long he'll be around, because obviously we know the injury now. He's having surgery. He's going to be out a minute. He's got a year left on his deal here with the Celtics. I just wonder beyond that, do you see a world in where Porzingis re-signs and he's here for a long time? Can they make the money work? Do you think maybe because of the injury, this next ride here, this next season might be it for him? How do you sort of see this, chapter, Kristaps Porzingis with the Celtics? How do you see it ending?
Yeah, that's a good question, Travis. I hadn't really thought about that, to be honest, because I thought of Porzingis as being a part of this for the foreseeable future. But you're right. When you look at the contract, it's okay, they got to pay Tatum. They're going to have to pay Brown again. They're going to try to extend Derek White. How are they going to make all this money work? And so Porzingis might be the odd man out here. I don't know. But at the same time, it's just this is not a guy that you're going to trade right now. This is not a guy that you're going to trade at any deadline, because the Celtics are going to be contenders for the foreseeable future, and you'd want him in the mix. At least that's what I think. Who knows? Brad Stevens, could have something else in mind, where he's looking to get draft picks back, or he's looking to add just another piece, and maybe looking at how things played out in the postseason, Trav, where they were able to win without Porzingis. Yeah. He makes things a lot easier on you, no question about that. But at the same time, it's just wait a minute, this roster is pretty good without him too. So I don't know. I think my sort of knee-jerk reaction, the answer to that question is I don't see him in the fold long term like I see the Jays in the fold, right? Yeah, yeah.
How could you? With his history, he does. I'm looking at it now. He has 2 years left on his current deal. And by the way, we talked about this.
So this season coming up, and then the next season after that. Okay, which is then there's some time.
You take it. And by the way, this goes back to our conversation we had on a different episode, where I almost now have more of a sense of urgency to add to the front court in terms of some size, because then you take pressure off of him to not only get healthy, but to stay healthy. If he's in a position where you're not asking, and by the way, I thought this past season they did a great job of what I'm about to say, but you just don't want him playing too many regular season games, too many regular season minutes. You want to try to ensure that he's healthy in the postseason. And I know they did that this season and he still got hurt, but that's just a reality of doing business with this guy. So if I'm the Celtics, I have somewhat of a sense of urgency and to get some front court depth size-wise. I know they have some guys that can put the ball in the basket, but I just think you need some big bodies who can rim protect, who are athletic enough to run the floor, like Porzingis and Al Horford. You need that to spell, by the way, not just Porzingis, but Al Horford as well, who's getting long in the tooth. So I think after this current contract, Adam, I would bet the Porzingis chapter's probably closed. And by the way, one ring, I'll take it. If you get another ring out of him or two, that's a successful tenure here in Boston, and he'll be a made man forever.
Yeah, no question about that. And getting back to your point about the regular season, I remember when KG, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce were here, and it was sort of toward the tail end of that Big Three era, and how they had finished, I think, like 42-40 in the regular season, just over 500, but then made a run to the Eastern Conference Finals, and nobody really saw it coming. But I mean, those are guys that knew what what the main goal was, right? It wasn't to win games in the regular season. They could have probably won 50, 55 games that year, but they said, no, we're not going to overexert ourselves and put up regular season numbers and then be gassed by the postseason. And as a result, they ended up making a run. It was the 2012 season, and they pushed the Heat to 7 games. They had a 3-2 lead in that series, actually, and ended up, and then LeBron went off in Game 6, in that famous Game 6 here at the Garden, where he, had a monster game, and that was the end of that. But the regular season accolades are nice, right? They won 64 games this year, right? But if you take your foot off the gas a little bit, you give other guys, like Xavier Tillman, more run, or O'Shea Brissett more run, Peyton Pritchard more run, in order to preserve these guys, include namely Porzingis and Horford, as you mentioned. I mean, that will pay off in the end.